Hello folks, today we're on the northeastern coast of Australia, exactly where the Great Barrier Reef is located to tell you exactly what is going down between climate change and how that is impacting the Great Barrier Reef. Alright, let's jump in. Hello. Here we've arrived at the Great Barrier Reef. Wow, I can already see the tens of thousands of amazing species and fish and coral that make this place their home. Now, let's look into the first major impact on the Great Barrier Reef, ocean acidification. So, what causes ocean acidification? It all has to do with carbon dioxide, which starts off in the atmosphere. About a quarter of the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere ends up in the ocean. So now that carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is increasing, the carbon dioxide levels in the ocean are also increasing. Once that carbon dioxide gets taken in by the ocean, it turns into carbonic acid, which decreases the pH in the water. And this, again, is a general trend that shows the decreasing pH in the water. Now, corals are not weak. In fact, they are incredibly resistant. They can resist acidification on their own, but they also have to deal with the increases in temperature and salinity. And the impacts are greater in shallow regions, which is where the Great Barrier Reef is. So these graphs show how coral can resist changes. They can resist one of the changes, maybe even two, but not all three of them. And that concludes the facts about ocean acidification. Now let's take a look at the second major impact of climate change, coral bleaching. When water temperature exceeds around 35 Celsius or 95 Fahrenheit, the algae that makes home in the coral are expelled. These bleached corals continue to live, but they are much more vulnerable to disease and starvation. This algae, called zooxanthol, provides up to 90% of that coral's energy. So corals are deprived of nutrients when the zooxanthol are expelled. You might be wondering, why does this temperature increase cause the algae to leave? Well, this is because of the overexposure to high sea temperatures can lead to elevated levels of photosynthesis by the algae because of the increased amounts of carbon dioxide in the water, resulting in toxic amounts of oxygen in the coral's tissues. So by expelling the algae quickly, the corals can protect themselves in the short term. Here you can take a look at more examples of coral bleaching. On the left is a real-life example, and on the right is a model of before and after. Now, data shows that the temperature of the sea around Australia has increased, which means that the Great Barrier Reef, which is one of the most important ecosystems in the world, is directly impacted by coral bleaching from a rise in temperatures. And here you can see the last 3 mass coral bleaching events that happened in the Great Barrier Reef. The red coloring highlights the areas that were severely bleached, and it is clear to see that the north, middle, and south reef were affected between 2016 and 2020. Due to rising ocean temperatures, coral bleaching events are becoming much more frequent and severe, or while corals are able to recover from them, more frequent and severe events will decrease the coral's likelihood to survive. Now, let's move on to the final major impact of climate change, human tourism.
Alright, let's talk about the human impact on the Great Barrier Reef. How humans sadly ruin everything. So, let's talk about tourists. Every year, about 2 million people visit the Great Barrier Reef, and only 64,000 of them have full-time jobs. I'm not very good at math, that's a lot of people. Now, tourists physically damage the reef via snorkeling, scuba diving. They pollute the water with their tons of trash and human waste, as well as they disturb the wildlife when they don't maintain a respectful distance. There's also an increased pressure of recreational fishing, and the reef can't handle that many people. So let's talk about how the reef impacts the surrounding ecosystem. For starters, it protects against flooding, erosion of coastlines, and storms. It also provides jobs and sources of food for local communities. The reef generates about $6.4 billion a year for the Australian economy. That's a lot of money. It's also home to thousands of aquatic animals, being one of the most biodiverse environments in the whole world. Now, let's look at this image right here and show how the Great Barrier Reef has deteriorated over time. Before human impact, you can see the reef was a colorful and nourishing environment, but now it looks more like a graveyard. This graph over here shows the changes in coral cover between 1980 and 2000s. In the 80s, coral cover has a normal distribution, what we would expect. But as we progress on to closer to today, we can see our coral cover is severely declining. Now, what are we gonna do to take this boneyard to this? Well,
That's where we need you.
donate to charities that are keeping the reef clean, petition to governments to regulate land use near the reef, and work to keep your own waterways healthy. Even clean up your local river or beach. Every individual can lower their carbon emissions, and then if every individual can lower their carbon emissions, that'll have an even greater impact on rising global temperatures. Thank you.